You are not poor because you lack effort. You are not stuck because you lack talent. You are drifting because you lack one thing that almost nobody is taught how to develop: organized, directed thought. The tragedy is not that people fail. The tragedy is that they never learn why they fail. For more than 25 years, I studied men who were branded as failures and men who were celebrated as giants. I discovered that the difference between the two was rarely intelligence, background, or luck. It was control of the mind. One group directed their thoughts, the other allowed their thoughts to drift. Drifting is silent. It does not announce itself with disaster. It shows up as distraction, as half-finished plans, as goals that change every 6 months, as enthusiasm that burns bright for a week and dies quietly in the dark. Most men do not fail in a single dramatic moment. They fade. You may have tried affirmations, you may have tried discipline, you may have tried working harder, waking earlier, pushing longer, yet something always seems to collapse at the final stretch. The deal falls through, the habit breaks, the money slips away, and you wonder what invisible force keeps blocking you. There is such a force. It is not mystical, it is psychological. When your thoughts are not organized around a definite purpose, they scatter. And scattered thought has no power. Energy without direction produces exhaustion. Direction without persistence produces frustration. You need both. In my research, I uncovered 30 major causes of failure. They were not random accidents. They were patterns: indecision, fear of criticism, lack of persistence, the habit of drifting from one plan to another. These patterns repeat across generations because they live in the human mind. Fear is the great corrupter of thought. Fear of poverty, fear of loss, fear of what others will say. Fear persuades you to postpone action. It whispers that tomorrow will be safer, but tomorrow is the favorite hiding place of unfulfilled ambition. While you hesitate, opportunity moves on. In it, I made it clear that fear is the tool of a man-made devil, and self-confident faith is the weapon that defeats it. Faith is not blind optimism. It is disciplined belief, reinforced by repetition and action. It is a state of mind you cultivate deliberately. All achievement begins with an idea. This is not poetry, it is law. In I-Shear, the principle is stated plainly. All earned riches have their beginning in an idea, but an idea alone is powerless. It must be backed by desire so intense that it becomes an obsession. Desire is the starting point of all achievement, not wish, not curiosity. Desire, a burning, definite purpose. When you lack this, you compensate by trying many things. You experiment endlessly. You search for the perfect strategy. But you never commit long enough for results to compound. The majority of people are not defeated by lack of opportunity. They are defeated by lack of definiteness. They do not decide exactly what they want. And because they do not decide, they cannot concentrate. And because they cannot concentrate, they cannot accumulate power. Power comes from organized knowledge directed toward a single objective. When your mind is scattered, your influence is scattered. When your purpose is unclear, your actions contradict each other. You save and then you spend, you commit and then you retreat, you start and then you drift. Drifting is subtle slavery. It feels like freedom because there is no pressure. But it is the most dangerous condition a mind can enter. A drifting mind accepts circumstances instead of shaping them. It reacts instead of initiates. It blames instead of builds. You may be closer to your breakthrough than you think. Many men stop 3 feet from gold because they interpret temporary defeat as permanent failure. In truth, defeat is often a test of persistence. The question is never whether you will meet resistance. The question is whether you will outlast it. There is a rhythm to thought. Repeated thoughts harden into beliefs. Beliefs guide decisions. Decisions produce habits. Habits determine destiny. If you do not consciously select your dominant thoughts, the world will select them for you through news, opinions, and the fears of other men. The mind is both a broadcasting and receiving station. It transmits what you dwell upon, and it attracts what harmonizes with it. This is not superstition, it is alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction, your effectiveness multiplies. You are not repelling success because you are unlucky. You are repelling it because your thoughts are divided. One part of you desires wealth, another part fears responsibility. One part of you wants recognition, another part fears criticism. Division weakens force. Unify your mind around one definite aim. Write it, repeat it, visualize it, back it with daily action. Surround yourself with minds that reinforce it instead of ridicule it. This is the principle of the master mind. Coordinated effort in a spirit of harmony toward a common goal. If you will discipline your thoughts, persist through temporary defeat, and refuse to drift, you will experience a transformation that seems almost magical. It is not magic, it is law. The same law that has lifted countless men from obscurity to influence. You have within you what I once called the other self. It awakens when you are forced to think clearly. It emerges when you refuse to accept mediocrity. It guides you when you silence fear and act with purpose. Most men never meet this self because they never demand enough of themselves. This moment is a decision point. You can continue experimenting, drifting, hoping something will finally work. Or you can decide on one clear objective and commit to it with the persistence of a man who refuses to stop 3 feet from gold. The difference between those who rise and those who remain where they are is not fate. It is not background. It is not luck. It is the disciplined use of thought. Master that, and you master the direction of your life. For more than 25 years, I devoted myself to the study of men who had failed and men who had triumphed, and I sought to discover the precise difference between them. I examined their schooling, their surroundings, their intelligence, their manner of speech, and even their physical strength. Again and again, I was compelled to the same conclusion. Failure was seldom the result of lack of effort. It was the result of lack of direction. I have seen men labor from sunrise until late into the night and yet remain poor, uncertain, and dissatisfied. They were not idle, they were not without ambition, but their ambition shifted as the wind shifts. One year they pursued commerce, the next year speculation, the next year invention. They mistook movement for progress. They confused activity with advancement, and in doing so they surrendered years without knowing it. The most tragic discovery I made in studying 25,000 failures is this. The majority never learned why they failed. They blamed circumstances. They blamed markets. They blamed unfavorable conditions. Yet beneath all excuses lay one silent enemy, drifting thought. They permitted their minds to wander without command, and a wandering mind cannot accumulate power. Drifting is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with ruin. It appears in small delays, in unfinished tasks, in goals that are revised every few months, in enthusiasm that flares brightly and then fades. Most men do not collapse in a single moment. They fade gradually, year by year, until their earlier ambitions seem like distant memories. A man may possess remarkable ability, yet if he lacks a definite chief aim, he will scatter his force in many directions. Scattered force is weak force. Imagine sunlight diffused across a field. It warms, but does not burn. Concentrate that same sunlight through a lens, and it will ignite. The human mind operates under the same law. Concentration produces power. Diffusion produces mediocrity. When I questioned men who had failed, I often asked them, "What do you want?" The answers were vague. "I want success. I want security. I want a better life." Yet when pressed for precision, what amount, what position, what service, they hesitated. They had never compelled themselves to decide. Without decision, there can be no plan. Without plan, there can be no persistence. Without persistence, there can be no achievement. Indecision disguises itself as prudence. It whispers that one must wait for better conditions. It suggests that further reflection will bring clarity. Meanwhile, months pass, years pass. Opportunities drift to those who decide swiftly and act boldly. The man who hesitates convinces himself that caution is wisdom, yet he slowly pays for that caution with lost time. I recall many men who possessed talents equal to those who became leaders, yet they remained followers because they never fixed their minds upon a single objective. They sampled trades as one samples dishes at a banquet. They tasted, they evaluated, they moved on. But mastery requires devotion. Devotion requires decision. Decision requires courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery of fear through definite purpose. A man who knows precisely what he wants can endure ridicule, delay, and temporary defeat because his mind is anchored. A man without anchor drifts wherever opinion pushes him. Thus, the fear of criticism becomes fatal only to those who have not decided firmly. Consider the contrast between a drifter and a man of definiteness. The drifter speaks in generalities. He says, "Someday I will succeed." The definite man says, "I will render this service in this manner by this time." The drifter changes his associations frequently, seeking encouragement. The definite man selects his associations carefully and remains steady. As I studied the lives of men such as Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, and Thomas Edison, I did not find men free of obstacles. I found men who refused to scatter their thought. Carnegie fixed his aim upon the steel industry and organized his alliances accordingly. Ford fixed his aim upon building a motor car for the multitude and persisted despite ridicule. Edison fixed his aim upon invention and labored through thousands of experiments. Their genius lay not in restless experimentation, but in unwavering concentration. The years they might have wasted in doubt were compressed into years of directed effort. That is how a man saves 10 years of his life. He saves it by refusing to wander. He saves it by declining to chase every attractive opportunity. He saves it by selecting one definite purpose and bending his thought toward it daily. The difference between scattered thought and organized thought is the difference between wishing and commanding. Organized thought begins with a written statement of purpose. It continues with a plan. It is reinforced through repetition. It is protected from negative influence. It is strengthened through persistent action. In time, it acquires momentum. Scattered thought, on the other hand, begins with enthusiasm but lacks structure. It is influenced easily by the opinions of others. It changes direction when difficulty appears. It seeks quick reward and abandons effort when reward delays. Such thought never accumulates sufficient force to overcome resistance. I have witnessed men spend 5 years in one occupation, abandon it when promotion seemed slow, and then spend another 5 years beginning anew elsewhere. At the end of 10 years, they stood no further advanced than when they began. Not because they lacked capacity, but because they lacked continuity. Continuity is born of definiteness. Definiteness is born of decision. Decision is born of desire. Thus the chain begins. When desire is weak, decision falters. When decision falters, continuity breaks. When continuity breaks, time is lost. If you wish to reclaim the years that would otherwise slip from your grasp, begin by asking yourself a simple question. What precisely do I intend to achieve? Do not answer lightly. Do not answer in vague phrases. Fix it in writing. Assign it a date. Declare what service you will render in exchange. Many men avoid this exercise because it forces them to confront their own indecision. Yet this single act of clarity can save a decade. Once the mind is fixed upon a definite aim, irrelevant opportunities lose their charm. Distractions lose their power. You become selective. You begin to measure each action by its relation to your chief purpose. Others will notice this change. They will sense direction in your speech. They will detect firmness in your bearing. The man who once appeared uncertain will appear deliberate. The one who once drifted will appear anchored. Employers will entrust him with greater responsibility because he no longer radiates confusion. The tragedy of the 25,000 failures I studied was not that they lacked ability. It was that they lacked a commanding objective around which ability could organize itself. Ability without direction is like steam released into the air. Ability with direction is like steam confined within an engine, capable of moving great machinery. There is nothing mystical in this observation. It is law. Thought is energy. Energy must be directed. If you fail to direct it consciously, it will dissipate unconsciously. And unconscious dissipation is the true cause behind the majority of failures. You may be tempted to believe that you require more knowledge before deciding. Yet knowledge without purpose is merely information. Purpose transforms information into organized knowledge. Organized knowledge becomes power only when it is applied toward a definite end. Thus, the first lesson I learned from studying 25,000 failures is this: lack of definiteness is the silent destroyer of time. It steals years without announcement. It persuades men that tomorrow will provide clarity. It encourages endless preparation without commitment. To save 10 years of your life, resolve now that you will not drift. Resolve that you will no longer begin without deciding. Resolve that you will concentrate your thought as a magnifying glass concentrates sunlight. Write your purpose. Study it. Speak it. Act upon it daily. In doing so, you separate yourself from the vast majority who fade quietly into mediocrity. You become deliberate where they are uncertain. You become focused where they are scattered. And from that single distinction flows every advantage that success confers. This is the foundation upon which all subsequent principles rest. Without definiteness, faith cannot be sustained. Without definiteness, persistence cannot endure. Without definiteness, the master mind cannot function. Therefore, if you grasp nothing else from my study of 25,000 failures, grasp this: the disciplined direction of thought is the beginning of all achievement. And the moment you decide, truly decide, you begin to reclaim the years that drifting would have consumed. When I began to classify the causes of failure, I expected to find complexity. I expected to uncover mysterious forces or rare disadvantages that separated the unsuccessful from the successful. Instead, I discovered repetition. The same habits appeared in city after city, in trade after trade, in men of different backgrounds and different education. Failure obeyed patterns as faithfully as success obeyed laws. The first and most common pattern was indecision. Men postponed conclusions. They delayed commitments. They gathered opinions endlessly, yet avoided final judgment. Indecision weakens initiative. It invites doubt. It allows fear to enter unnoticed, and once fear occupies the mind, action is postponed until opportunity moves on to a bolder spirit. Indecision does not feel dangerous. It feels cautious. It persuades a man that he is being thoughtful, even wise. Yet I observed that successful men decide promptly and change slowly, while unsuccessful men decide slowly and change often. This single contrast explained years of lost progress in thousands of cases. Closely allied with indecision is the fear of criticism. I have seen capable men abandon promising plans because a friend expressed doubt or a relative offered ridicule. The opinions of others became more powerful than their own convictions. In yielding to criticism, they surrendered their authority over their own destiny. Fear of poverty operates with equal force. It persuades a man to cling to security while secretly resenting his limitations. It divides the mind. One part longs for advancement. Another part whispers of risk and danger. Division weakens power. Unified thought strengthens it. A divided mind hesitates. A unified mind acts. Lack of persistence emerged as another dominant cause. Many men begin with enthusiasm. They outline plans, speak boldly of future achievement, and labor diligently for a short season. Then resistance appears. A contract falls through. A promotion delays. A venture yields slower returns than expected. At that moment, persistence is tested and often abandoned. I recall the story of the man who ceased drilling for gold when the ore disappeared. He concluded the vein had ended. In truth, he had stopped 3 feet from a rich deposit. Another man, guided by expert counsel and persistence, resumed the effort and discovered fortune. The difference was not intelligence. It was refusal to quit at the first sign of discouragement. Another pattern I observed was the habit of shifting plans too quickly. A man would set a course, encounter minor difficulty, and immediately revise his approach. In constant adjustment, he lost continuity. Progress demands sustained direction. Constant alteration destroys momentum. Time is wasted not in failure alone, but in perpetual restarting. Blaming circumstances formed yet another recurring theme. Men attributed their lack of progress to unfavorable markets, to unsympathetic employers, to economic conditions, to competition. Rarely did they examine their own habits of thought. Yet in the few cases where men accepted responsibility for their results, improvement followed swiftly. Waiting for perfect conditions proved equally destructive. Many postponed action until they felt entirely prepared. They sought additional study, additional savings, additional assurance. Meanwhile, those who acted under imperfect conditions gained experience and advantage. Conditions are rarely perfect. Progress belongs to those who act despite uncertainty. Following the majority was another silent cause of failure. The majority tends toward caution, toward conformity, toward avoidance of risk. Those who rise above mediocrity often stand alone in the beginning. They accept temporary isolation in exchange for long-term advancement. The majority ridicules what it does not yet understand. Misuse of time appeared consistently in the lives of those who struggled. Hours were spent in idle conversation, in unplanned activity, in tasks unrelated to a definite purpose. Time is the raw material of achievement. When it is squandered carelessly, years evaporate. When it is organized deliberately, even ordinary effort yields extraordinary results. I discovered that each cause of failure corresponded to a law of success. Indecision is countered by prompt decision. Fear of criticism is countered by faith in one's definite aim. Lack of persistence is countered by a burning desire strong enough to withstand delay. Shifting plans are countered by organized planning sustained over time. Recognizing these patterns is itself a form of liberation. When a man understands that failure is not random but lawful, he ceases to feel persecuted by fate. He begins to analyze his own habits. He asks not, "Why is life unfair?" but rather, "Which law have I neglected?" In that question lies the beginning of mastery. Consider Henry Ford in his early years. He endured ridicule from financiers who doubted the practicality of his vision. Had he yielded to criticism, his enterprise would have dissolved. Instead, he decided firmly, persisted stubbornly, and refined his plans without abandoning his chief aim. His confidence attracted capable associates and capital. Andrew Carnegie, too, faced resistance, yet he did not drift from industry to industry seeking easier paths. He fixed his purpose upon steel and organized his alliances accordingly. His example demonstrates how continuity, guided by decision, compresses decades of trial into years of focused achievement. When you begin to recognize these patterns within yourself, do not condemn yourself. Instruction, not condemnation, is required. Each pattern reveals precisely what must be corrected. If you notice hesitation, practice prompt decision. If you notice fear of opinion, strengthen faith through repetition of your purpose. Say to yourself, "I decide firmly and promptly. I do not retreat from my chosen aim. I am not governed by fear of criticism. I use time wisely and direct it toward my chief purpose." Temporary defeat strengthens rather than discourages me. As these affirmations are repeated and reinforced by action, habits shift, beliefs adjust. The mind begins to align with success instead of drift. And with that alignment comes a remarkable saving of time. Actions become purposeful. Effort becomes cumulative. Progress accelerates. 10 years are saved when indecision is replaced by commitment. 20 years are saved when fear no longer delays action. 30 years may be reclaimed when persistence carries you beyond the point where others surrender. These are not exaggerations. They are the natural result of lawful mental discipline. The men and women I observed who rose above the ordinary were not free from these temptations. They felt fear. They faced doubt. They encountered criticism. The difference lay in their response. They acknowledged resistance, yet refused to yield authority over their thoughts. You, too, stand at that point of choice. Having learned that failure follows patterns, you may continue unconsciously repeating them, or you may deliberately substitute new habits. The power to substitute lies within your control. The study of 25,000 failures taught me this with unmistakable clarity. The mind, left undisciplined, drifts toward defeat. The mind, disciplined by decision, faith, and persistence, advances toward achievement. The choice between these directions determines not only success, but the number of years required to attain it. Thus, if you would shorten the road ahead, begin by identifying the patterns that have governed you. Replace them systematically. Persist in that replacement until the new habits become natural. In doing so, you will cease to wander through repeated cycles of delay and disappointment. You will move forward with clarity where once you hesitated. You will stand firm where once you retreated. And the years that might have been consumed by repetition of old errors will instead be invested in deliberate advancement. That is the lesson the 30 patterns of defeat were meant to teach. After examining the patterns of defeat, I turned my attention to the force that distinguished the few who rose above them. I found that every enduring achievement began with desire, not a casual wish, not a mild preference, but a burning, definite purpose that left no room for retreat. Desire is the starting point of all achievement. Without it, effort dissolves at the first sign of difficulty. A wish says, "I hope." Desire says, "I will." A wish negotiates with circumstance. Desire commands it. The majority drift because their aims are wishes disguised as intentions. They speak of ambition, yet they leave the door open for withdrawal. They desire success, but not enough to exclude distraction. In studying thousands of lives, I observed that the men who advanced most rapidly were those who selected one definite purpose and refused to dilute it. They did not divide their energies among a dozen experiments. They committed. Commitment concentrates power. Concentrated power produces results. Let me illustrate with a young man who once stood at the threshold of opportunity. He possessed no wealth, no influential friends, no special schooling. Yet in his mind, he had already reached his destination. He had decided he would become associated in business with Thomas Edison. He did not say he would seek employment. He said he would become a partner. That young man was Edwin C. Barnes. When he arrived at Edison's office, he did not resemble a future associate, but he possessed something more powerful than appearance. He possessed definiteness of purpose. He accepted humble beginnings because they aligned with his aim. He endured delay because his desire did not weaken. Barnes did not drift into partnership by accident. He did not sample other trades while waiting. He fixed his mind upon a single objective and remained there until circumstances aligned with his intention. Years that might have been wasted in wandering were instead invested in steady preparation. This is the difference between a drifter and a builder. The drifter experiments indefinitely. The builder commits. The drifter says, "If this fails, I will try something else." The builder says, "I will persist until this succeeds." Such language is not mere phrasing. It reveals the structure of thought. When desire is intense, it excludes alternatives. It organizes imagination. It compels planning. It summons persistence. When desire is weak, the mind seeks escape at the first obstacle. Thus, the strength of desire determines the durability of effort. If you would save 10 years of your life, you must cultivate desire deliberately. Begin by writing a clear statement of your definite chief aim. Specify what you intend to achieve. Fix a date. Declare what you will render in service in return. Do not write vaguely. Precision strengthens emotion. Read your statement morning and night. As you read, see yourself already in possession of that which you seek. Feel the satisfaction as though it were present fact. Emotional intensity imprints thought upon the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, in turn, influences action and perception. Many men claim they lack opportunity, yet they lack intensity. They dabble. They delay. They envy the achievements of others, but do not study the desire that produced them. Envy, when properly directed, can become instruction. Instead of resenting the success of another, ask, what was his definite aim? How long did he persist? What service did he render? When you convert envy into aspiration, you transform weakness into fuel. The achievements of others become proof that law operates consistently. If one man of ordinary background can rise through definiteness, so can another. Observe how others respond to a person of burning purpose. Employers sense reliability. Associates sense conviction. Customers sense confidence. A man who speaks with certainty commands attention. He does not plead, he presents. His very bearing communicates that he knows where he is going. Contrast this with the uncertain individual. His speech is tentative, his plans shift. He asks repeatedly for reassurance. Others hesitate to invest trust in him because he has not invested faith in himself. Society rewards stability. It advances those who radiate direction. Henry Ford did not begin with universal approval. Many considered his ambition impractical. Yet his desire to build a motor car for the multitude did not fluctuate with opinion. That steadiness attracted capital and capable associates. His burning purpose organized effort around a single design. Thomas Edison conducted thousands of experiments before producing practical results. A weaker desire would have surrendered long before success appeared, but his aim was fixed. Each temporary defeat became instruction rather than discouragement. Desire converts obstacles into stepping stones. You must examine the intensity of your own purpose. If it weakens easily, strengthen it through repetition. If it divides under criticism, reaffirm it through action. Desire grows when it is fed by persistence and belief. Say to yourself, my purpose is definite. My desire is strong. I will render useful service. I will persist until I achieve my aim. Temporary defeat does not weaken my resolve. It intensifies it. These affirmations are not empty words. When spoken with conviction and reinforced by daily action, they cultivate belief. Belief supports persistence. Persistence advances progress. Progress reinforces belief. Thus, the cycle strengthens. The tragedy of many lives is not lack of ability, but lack of sustained desire. Men begin with enthusiasm, yet allow comfort, criticism, or delay to cool their ambition. Years slip away while they search for renewed excitement. The disciplined individual does not wait for emotion. He generates it through repetition and action. Desire must be guarded against dilution. Limit unnecessary distractions. Associate with those who encourage your aim rather than ridicule it. Select reading and conversation that reinforce your purpose. Protect your mental environment as carefully as you would guard valuable property. When desire dominates thought, imagination awakens. Ideas present themselves unexpectedly. Plans evolve. Opportunities previously unnoticed become visible. This is not mystery. It is concentration. The mind tuned to a definite aim recognizes relevance quickly and discards irrelevance swiftly. Thus, desire becomes the dividing line between the drifter and the builder. The drifter reacts to circumstances. The builder shapes them. The drifter waits for motivation. The builder creates it. The drifter envies success. The builder studies and applies its principles. If you would reclaim 20 years that might otherwise be spent in restless experimentation, fix your aim now. Let your desire burn so brightly that alternatives lose appeal. Act daily in harmony with that desire. Persist when enthusiasm wanes. Strengthen belief through repetition. In doing so, you align yourself with the law that governed every man of enduring accomplishment I have studied. Desire precedes faith. Faith precedes decision. Decision precedes action. Action, sustained by persistence, yields reward. The fire of desire is not accidental. It is cultivated. It is intensified by clarity. It is protected by discipline. And once it takes hold, it transforms scattered effort into directed power. This is what I learned from observing thousands who failed and the few who succeeded. Where desire was weak, drift prevailed. Where desire was burning and definite, obstacles yielded. Save your years by strengthening that fire now, for without it, all other principles remain dormant. With it, they become unstoppable forces in your service. After studying desire as the starting point of achievement, I turn to the force that either strengthens or weakens it. That force is faith. Faith is not a gift bestowed upon a fortunate few. It is a state of mind that may be cultivated deliberately, and it is the antidote to the fears that consume years of human life. Fear and faith cannot occupy the mind in equal measure. One dominates, the other retreats. The majority of men permit fear to take command because they never discipline their thoughts. They allow worry, doubt, and criticism to repeat themselves until they become belief. That belief shapes action, and action shapes destiny. Faith, like fear, grows through repetition. Whatever thought is repeated with emotion is impressed upon the subconscious mind. The subconscious accepts what it is given and influences behavior accordingly. If you dwell upon defeat, you will unconsciously move toward it. If you dwell upon success with conviction, you will unconsciously advance toward it. I identified 6 basic fears that appeared again and again among the 25,000 failures I studied. Fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, fear of death. Of these, fear of poverty and fear of criticism proved most destructive to ambition. Fear of poverty divides intention. A man desires wealth, yet he fears risk. He dreams of independence, yet clings to security. His actions betray his hesitation. He moves forward and then retreats. Years pass in this state of divided thought. Division dissipates power. Fear of criticism silences initiative before it begins. Many men abandon promising plans because they dread ridicule. They consult neighbors who have achieved little and accept discouragement as wisdom. They postpone action until approval is guaranteed, and approval rarely precedes achievement. The conquest of fear begins with faith in a definite purpose. When your aim is clear and your desire intense, faith grows through action. Each step taken in harmony with your purpose strengthens belief. Each act of courage weakens fear. Henry Ford once instructed his engineers to produce a motor that appeared beyond present ability. They calculated and declared it impossible. Ford did not argue with emotion. He insisted calmly. He had decided. His faith did not depend upon present evidence. It rested upon conviction. Months passed. Resistance continued, yet Ford persisted. In time, the engineers produced the design he had demanded. Had he yielded to their doubts, history would have recorded a different outcome. Faith enabled him to hold his ground until evidence aligned with his belief. Faith does not eliminate difficulty. It eliminates surrender. It does not prevent obstacles. It transforms them into temporary conditions. The man of faith interprets delay as instruction, not rejection. He sees resistance as part of the path, not proof of impossibility. Autosuggestion is the method by which faith is cultivated. By repeating your definite aim with emotion and conviction, you impress it upon your subconscious mind. The subconscious then influences your thoughts, habits, and actions in harmony with that aim. This process is lawful, not mystical. If you repeat statements of doubt, you cultivate fear. If you repeat statements of belief, you cultivate faith. The choice rests entirely with you. The mind does not distinguish between constructive and destructive suggestion. It responds to repetition. The man who lacks faith speaks hesitantly. His plans are tentative. Others sense uncertainty and hesitate to associate with him. The man who has cultivated faith speaks calmly and directly. He does not boast. He declares. That quiet certainty attracts cooperation. Consider Andrew Carnegie in the early days of his enterprise. He assembled men of specialized knowledge and bound them together in harmony. His faith in the future of the steel industry enabled him to act decisively while others hesitated. That faith attracted capable allies. When you strengthen faith, you alter not only your internal condition, but your external relationships. Employers entrust you with responsibility. Associates seek your counsel. Customers respond to your assurance. Confidence inspires confidence. To cultivate faith deliberately, prepare a statement of self-confidence. Declare that you know you have the ability to achieve your definite aim. Declare that you will render useful service. Declare that you will not permit temporary defeat to weaken your determination. Repeat this statement daily. Speak it aloud. Feel its meaning. Act in harmony with it. As repetition combines with action, belief strengthens. As belief strengthens, fear diminishes. The years once consumed by hesitation begin to compress. Fear consumes time quietly. It persuades you to postpone action. It suggests further preparation. It magnifies risk and minimizes opportunity. 1 year of hesitation becomes 2. 2 become 5. By the time you recognize the pattern, a decade may have passed. Faith accelerates time. It prompts decisive action. It shortens delay. It reduces internal conflict. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in harmony, progress quickens. 10 years of drift can be replaced by 3 years of directed effort. The conquest of fear does not require dramatic gestures. It requires steady discipline. Each day that you act, despite uncertainty, strengthens courage. Each day that you repeat your purpose reinforces belief. Gradually, fear loses authority. Say to yourself, I have faith in my definite purpose. I am not governed by fear of poverty. I am not influenced by fear of criticism. I move forward with confidence and persistence. My belief grows stronger each day. These affirmations must be supported by action. Faith without action is fragile. Action without faith is inconsistent. Combined, they form an unbreakable alliance. The 25,000 failures I studied were not condemned by fate. They were delayed by fear. They permitted doubt to dominate thought. They repeated discouraging ideas until those ideas shaped behavior. In doing so, they surrendered years unnecessarily. You need not repeat their pattern. You may cultivate faith intentionally. You may select the thoughts you reinforce. You may discipline your mind as carefully as you would discipline your body. When faith replaces fear, clarity emerges. Decision becomes easier. Persistence becomes natural. The opinions of others lose power. Your purpose stands firm. Thus, faith is not merely a spiritual quality, it is a practical instrument. It saves time by eliminating hesitation. It conserves energy by preventing internal conflict. It attracts cooperation by projecting certainty. This is the lesson I learned from observing both defeat and triumph. Fear divides and delays. Faith unifies and advances. The mind you discipline today determines the years you will save tomorrow. Cultivate faith deliberately, guard it carefully, reinforce it daily. In doing so, you reclaim control over your thoughts, and through control of thought, you reclaim the direction of your life. In my study of thousands who failed and the few who triumphed, I discovered that decision marks the boundary line between drift and direction. The majority of failures reach their condition not through ignorance nor through lack of opportunity, but through the habit of postponing decision. They allowed others to influence their choices. They waited, they reconsidered, and in waiting, they surrendered time. Successful men decide promptly and change slowly. That single habit distinguishes them sharply from the hesitant multitude. When a man reaches a conclusion after careful thought and fixes his aim, he protects that decision from the winds of opinion. He does not revise his purpose at every passing doubt. He stands by it. Hesitation appears harmless in the moment. It feels cautious. It feels intelligent. Yet hesitation is often fear disguised as prudence. It allows opportunity to pass to those who are prepared to act. Months lost to hesitation become years. Years become regret. Thus, indecision extracts its price in time. Decision, when firmly made, organizes thought. It eliminates alternatives. It simplifies effort. When you have decided what you will do, you no longer scatter your attention across endless possibilities. You concentrate. Concentration builds momentum. Momentum accelerates results. Closely linked with decision is persistence. Decision fixes the direction. Persistence supplies the force. Without persistence, decision dissolves at the first obstacle. Without decision, persistence lacks aim. Together, they form a partnership that compresses time. Permit me to remind you of the little girl who demanded 50 cents from a reluctant storekeeper. She stood before a grown man who expected obedience. She did not argue loudly. She did not retreat timidly. She stood firm and repeated her demand. The storekeeper, surprised by her resolve, surrendered. Her persistence overcame authority. That lesson is not childish. It is profound. Many grown men abandon their aims at the first resistance, while a child who refuses to retreat obtains her objective. Persistence is not loud, it is steady. It does not boast, it endures. Consider again the miner who ceased drilling when the ore seemed exhausted. He interpreted difficulty as finality. Another man, advised by an expert, resumed drilling a few feet further and uncovered wealth. The distance between failure and fortune was small. The distance between quitting and persistence was great. How many ambitions are abandoned 3 feet from gold? How many enterprises are dissolved just before success appears? I have observed countless instances where men retreated at the precise moment persistence would have yielded reward. Years were lost not through inability, but through surrender. Decision must therefore be guarded carefully. When you fix your definite chief aim, share it sparingly. Protect it from negative influence. Opinions are abundant. Conviction is rare. The majority often discourages boldness because it fears deviation from custom. Many of the great leaders of industry and statesmanship stood alone in the beginning. They faced doubt, criticism, and resistance. Yet they refused to retreat from their chosen course. Their firmness gradually attracted support. People respect determination even when they initially question it. When you decide firmly and persist steadily, the world's attitude toward you changes. Employers entrust you with greater responsibility because you demonstrate reliability. Associates seek your counsel because you do not waver easily. Customers respond to your steadiness because it inspires confidence. Contrast this with the individual who revises his plans constantly. Others hesitate to depend upon him. They sense uncertainty. They withhold trust. Thus his opportunities diminish, not because he lacks ability, but because he lacks constancy. Persistence is sustained effort guided by definite purpose. It is not stubbornness without direction. It is not blind refusal to adapt. It is intelligent endurance in pursuit of a chosen objective. It adjusts methods when necessary, but it does not abandon the aim. Henry Ford's insistence upon producing a motor others declared impossible illustrates persistence guided by conviction. He did not discard his purpose when experts doubted him. He maintained his direction and required continued effort until success emerged. His firmness saved years that might have been consumed by retreat. Decision and persistence require discipline. They demand that you confront discomfort. They demand that you act despite uncertainty. Yet they repay this discipline richly. Each obstacle overcome strengthens belief. Each difficulty endured increases resilience. Progress becomes cumulative. Time is the most valuable asset you possess. Decision preserves it. Persistence multiplies its return. Indecision wastes it. Quitting destroys its potential. When you hesitate repeatedly, you must restart repeatedly. Restarting consumes energy and years. If you would save 10 years of wandering, resolve to decide promptly. If you would save 20 years of regret, resolve to persist through temporary defeat. If you would save 30 years of frustration, refuse to retreat at the first sign of resistance. Affirm to yourself, I decide quickly and firmly. I protect my decisions from outside doubt. I persist until I succeed. Temporary defeat strengthens my determination. I do not drift from my purpose. These affirmations must be accompanied by daily conduct. Each time you act promptly, you reinforce the habit of decision. Each time you continue despite difficulty, you reinforce persistence. Gradually, these habits become natural. The majority allow the opinions of others to govern their actions. They seek approval before they act. They fear disapproval more than they desire achievement. Such fear produces delay. Delay produces stagnation. Stagnation produces dissatisfaction. The decisive individual respects counsel but retains authority. He listens, evaluates, and concludes. Once concluded, he advances. He does not consult endlessly. He does not retreat at the first sign of opposition. He understands that resistance accompanies every worthy aim. I have seen men of average talent surpass men of exceptional talent simply because they possessed greater persistence. Talent without endurance falters. Endurance without talent can still triumph. For skill may be acquired, but firmness must be cultivated. Persistence also requires organized planning. It is not blind repetition of ineffective effort. It is continued effort guided by revised plans. When a method fails, adjust the method, not the purpose. The purpose remains fixed. The plan evolves. Each act of persistence shortens the road ahead. Each retreat lengthens it. When you refuse to quit, you eliminate the need to begin again. Beginning again is costly in time and confidence. Continuity accelerates progress. As you develop firmness of decision and steadiness of persistence, you will observe a transformation in yourself. Doubt diminishes. Confidence increases. Others perceive reliability in your conduct. You become known as one who follows through. That reputation alone can advance your position. Employers prefer those who complete tasks. Partners prefer those who remain loyal to plans. Customers prefer those who honor commitments. Thus, persistence not only advances your aim, it strengthens your standing. The study of 25,000 failures revealed that many possessed ambition, ability, and opportunity, yet lacked firmness. They postponed decision. They abandoned effort. They allowed criticism to redirect them. In doing so, they surrendered years unnecessarily. You need not follow that pattern. Decide. Protect your decision. Persist. Adjust methods when required, but do not surrender your aim. Each day of firmness compounds. Each month of persistence builds momentum. Each year of steady effort produces visible progress. Decision marks the beginning of direction. Persistence marks the continuation of direction. Together, they compress decades of wandering into years of advancement. That is the price paid in advance for achievement. Pay it willingly, for in doing so, you reclaim not only success, but time itself.